So yeah, due to timing, we're not gonna, we've got quite a few people. I see we've got over 40 people participating as well. So thank you very much for logging on and joining us today. I think, you know, with respect to the time, I think we might as well get this exciting event started. So I'm going to pass it on to Roy Culberson. Roy is the chair of Atlantic Grain Council. He's just going to say some opening remarks and then I'm going to come back in. So Roy, the floor is yours.
Is this chair behind you, Sharon Arlani?
Thank you, Heather. Welcome to Atlantic Grains Council and Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada's second Yield Enhancement Network, or YEN award ceremony. This isn't exactly the way we wanted to showcase this, but especially after the great time we had a year ago in PEI. But we are able to do this through Zoom. And thankfully, we have the technology to let us all get together, even from the UK, in all three provinces. With us only having 1 year under our belt, I am encouraged to see the producers from Nova Scotia and PEI participating this year. I want to thank everyone for attending, our PEI, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick growers who participated in the YEN, our British partners from ADAS, who are sharing their model with us and guiding our efforts. Dr. Aaron Mills from AAFC, who has spearheaded this project and made the connections to get this all started and continues to be there for us. Thanks, Aaron. I also want to thank everyone else that contributed to the effort, in particular, Doug McDonald, who oversaw these trials during this pandemic year, which was a challenge, our on-farm agronomy staff and the PEI soil and feed lab. I also want to welcome all of the officials we have present today. Actually, I don't want to just welcome you to the second YEN presentation. I really want to remind you that this is the only YEN award ceremony outside of Europe. Thanks to everyone here. We are showing strong leadership in grain and oilseed research and connecting this research to our producers by involving them and listening to their priorities. YEN is a perfect fit for this. The project combines the age-old concept of learning from producers with big data and modeling. The soil and crop had producer competitions as early as in the 1980s, and we shared information about growing practices. YEN combines this concept with big data and modern agronomic model, which brings us to a new level. I don't think I've ever seen a project where so much data has been collected, what the producer is doing and how the crop is developing. As producers, we really all like to have the greatest looking field and hopefully the largest crop. All I can say is welcome to the future. If growers like this and benefit from it, we will continue to the expansion on this. Once again, I want to thank our growers for making this real, ADAS for sharing their model, and Aaron Mills for making the connections and recognizing the value of this for Atlantic Canada. At this time, I will ask Heather Russell, she's our boss really, to say a few words. Thanks, Heather.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Roy, for those opening comments. So thank you everybody for being part of this award ceremony. This is an extremely exciting day to be involved in agriculture, and I'm just as excited to be here as you are. I want to also thank personally Aaron Mills for his leadership and ability of recognizing this is an important venture for the maritime producers. So I truly, I hope, Aaron, that you understand that just two little words, but it means a lot. So appreciate your dedication for sure. This past summer, as we all try not to, we're trying to forget, I guess, was a trying time for a lot of us. But I'm pleased to say, with us being in the middle of the pandemic, HEC succeeded on many fronts. We're able to add 2 additional provinces, being Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, to our YEN project, as well as having over 104 on-farm agronomy trials in the ground. This number is the most that we've had in the last 5 years, so that's quite promising as well. It's an honor to be involved in such an organization who understands the importance of research and is able to set and achieve these goals. Thank you to everyone who is part of the HEC team. So I know we're not here to listen to myself or Roy, so let's get the award meeting started. And so now I will pass it on to my friend Aaron for his opening comments.
Hey, thanks, Heather. I have to admit that this is actually my first Zoom call where I'm, presenting stuff, and it's definitely a little bit nerved up trying to get everything going here. I made sure I popped out to Value Village last night to get a few books to put on the shelf behind me to make it look like, I know what I'm talking about. So I feel a little bit better about that. So um, I I just wanted to echo both Roy and Heather that it's really amazing that we had the turnout for the end this year. The data that you guys are providing us is going to go a long way to boost the yields in the region and improve the quality in the region. So thank you for being part of this yen. The growers, I mean, we wouldn't have anything without you guys and giving us your fields and your data and everything like that. So that's basically the biggest part of this. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Roger Sylvester Bradley, and he invented the yen in the UK. And we call him the godfather of the yen. And I'll give you a little bit of a background on his history, and then I'll hand it over to him. So Roger Sylvester Bradley is head of crop performance with ADAS and an honorary professor with the University of Nottingham. After working on crop productivity and nutrition for over 40 years, Roger says that there's never been a more exciting time to be a crop scientist, so he refuses to retire, and we hope he doesn't retire. Having invented the yen, his main interest now is in action research, which is not just working for farmers, but working with farmers and their supporters to bring faster progress. His work is published in over 240 scientific papers and reports. Roger?
There you go.
Thank you very much, Aaron. That's very kind, and for the other introductions as well. I'm really pleased to be able to join you all, and was blessed to be able to be actually with you this time last year. Well, it was a bit earlier than this last year. So can you see my screen? Yeah, good. So I just wanted to introduce the group of people. The yen is as much about people as it is about crops and technology. So I think it's important to say that Ruth and I, who Ruth's going to be talking later, are part of a team in ADAS who we're all qualified scientists, but we're all completely committed to our science actually being useful. And they're all, as you can see, they're all a lot younger than me. But so I had a long experience of being a conventional crop scientist who did lots of little plots all over the country and developed recommendations to help the farmers make decisions. And then I did some experiments a few years ago where I realized that actually there's a huge gap between those little plots and your big fields. And part of that is just that your fields are so variable. So if I do an experiment in one part of the field, I'll get one answer. If I do it in the other part of the field, I'll get another answer. So we've realized that what we need to be doing is developing what we now call action research. So action research is research that isn't, as Aaron just said, it isn't for the practitioners, it's with the practitioners. So, but the technology, the way of doing that is not straightforward. It's not really been done in a thorough way before. So we're trying to work that out. And then part of that has been the development of the yen, but also we've been developing ways of doing experimentation on whole fields with farmers' machinery, where we can still do rigorous comparisons so that you can say the level of confidence you have in any effects. But then 5 years ago, we met Aaron, and Aaron was obviously a like-minded soul. And so he invited us to your beautiful part of the world to start thinking about setting up a yen in your part of the world. And I'm really impressed by the pace at which you're going. And so my job this morning for you, this afternoon for me, is to explain from a very UK point of view how we're trying to work in the yen. So I'm going to use as a backdrop all the examples come from the UK, but at the end I'm going to bring in one example from the UK to show you the actual specifics of how a UK winner actually won. But first of all, the important thing is to say that research, it's got the word, the sort of preface "re" in it. So you're repeating something and you're researching it all the time. And so it's a cyclical process, and you have to have some ideas to start with. So we have a way of understanding crops, which because of the small plot work, we've been writing down for decades in books that we hope farmers read. In fact, I'm not sure many farmers do. The students read them, but the farmers less so. So when we realized that this big gulf had to be bridged, what we did was to set up this yen. And the first step in the yen is actually to start taking measurements. We were appalled at how few farmers actually knew their yields field by field, year by year. And I'm sure you all do your accounts year by year, so you know the numbers, you know what you spend, you know what your returns are, and you know whether you're making a profit or not. We're just looking from a crop point of view for the same attitude. So for each decision unit, usually a field, it might be a group of fields, or it might be a subfield, but generally it's a field. So each field, we're looking to make some reliable, trustworthy measurements. And the way we do that is through this competition idea. So if you're in a competition, everybody has to trust the results, otherwise the competition doesn't work. So we've got some rules in the yen that stipulate how you measure your yield, but we also, because it isn't at all just about competition, it's about how to be as good as the winners. It's learning how to bridge the gap between what you can produce, what other people are producing, and ideally in the end, the potential production. Because these books that we write over on the left-hand side are actually that you can work out, as I'll show you in a minute, what the potential yield is. So we produce these diagrams. If you can see on the top right, there's a grey diagram that shows a box, which is the middle half of everybody's values, and the minimum and the maximum of everybody's values. And then you can see your own value against everybody else. So we don't tell you who all the other people are, but we just tell you what your value is, and then everybody else's results, so you can compare it with it. And we call this benchmarking, and we're doing it not just for yield, we're doing it for about 50 or 60 different measurements in your reports in order to explain the yield. So you can work the way through the production process and see how things evolve. Now that's really as far as we've got in the yen with you guys. But in the yen in the UK, we're starting to work our way around this cycle, so that after we've produced the reports, and Ruth is going to talk about how to read a report, because a report is quite a big document and it takes a bit of digestion. So Ruth's going to help you through that. But after we've got the reports, we then start forming all sorts of questions and ideas about ways of improving things. So in the UK, we try and support that process, and farmers get together in groups so that they can discuss their ideas, and they come up with plans of what they might change. Now, some of those things are pretty darned obvious and you would do them without any question, but some of those things, there's a bit of doubt about it. So they need testing. And that's what we see as the next step and the last of the 4 steps that takes you around this action research cycle. So that last step is testing with your own machinery, on your own farms, in your own conditions, so that you know it applies to you. And we've developed ways of doing those experiments that actually you can say, well, I'm 50% confident, 70% confident, 90% confident, 99% confident in whatever difference you've managed to show. And that's very important because of the huge variability everybody has in agriculture all around the world. So you cannot just take 2 numbers, compare them and say, well, the difference is real. It may not be. It may be completely spurious. So we have to be rigorous about, so that's the 4 steps of action research. But as I say, the YENs at the moment generally just do the first 2 steps. So I'm now going to take you through the concepts that we use to understand yield. And I've just got 3 words to describe it. Basically, our job as farmers is to convert solar energy using a leaf canopy into edible energy. So in the 3 words, we harvest energy. And that is why that guides the measurements we need to make in order to understand how well we're doing. Now, I know everybody in agriculture tends to look at what they spend as affecting what they produce. But in fact, the relationship between what you spend and what you produce is very weak. The relationship between solar energy captured and yield is very strong. And that's the way that we primarily have to understand high yields and how to get them. So if you imagine any field, in my book, every field should have a dashboard. And on that dashboard, instead of revs and kilometers per hour, what I would have is solar energy. And for that, we need to be able to measure solar energy. Well, we do measure solar energy. In fact, all the new technology that we have to monitor the weather gives us joules, but we have to call those terajoules when we work in agricultural units because we're talking about acres or hectares. So you all get something of the order in Atlantic Canada, 17 terajoules per hectare per year. So that's about a quarter of an Hiroshima bomb on each acre, okay? So it's a lot of energy, and the process of conversion is actually fairly stable, but very inefficient. So it's probably less than 1% efficient in your case. So we're interested in how that turns into growth. And because half of the energy that comes from the sun is actually not photosynthetically active, but just heats up your plants. Your plants have to be able to cool themselves, so they need water. So you have to keep an eye on the water supply. If you haven't got adequate water, you won't get photosynthesis working, and in fact your plant will start dying. So you need that water supply. So that's the second thing that you need to be monitoring if you want to understand your yields. And then the third thing is that crops don't grow old by the day. They do it according to accumulated temperature, and so you need to understand the effect of temperature on the life cycle of the crop that you happen to grow. So those are the 3 things, and I still haven't talked about anything you need to pay for. So really what we're talking about physiologically is, you know, we're in this fantastic position of having, once you've got your land, whether you've rented it or invested in it, you've got all these free inputs, and you've got to convert them, that's the job, into edible energy as fast as possible. So now I want to put some numbers on those on those concepts. So, and we do that because we've invested in, I mean, this is way back in my career. I wrote the first wheat growth guide in the 1990s, and that's gone through several editions now. So, and you're able to get this, and it has UK numbers in it, of course, from the AHDB website. It's free, you can download it, and it's free. And it gives you benchmarks for a high yielding crop, a crop yielding 11 tons per hectare, which I think is 4.4 tons per acre. So I've now got a graph that shows you the developing crop, and the crop takes something like 3,000 day degrees to get from seed to seed. So, and basically the first 1,000 days are to do with foundation, setting up the structure for the crop, and the roots and the tillers. The second 1,000 day degrees is to do with construction of the crop, and the last 1,000 day degrees is that it's less, and that is to do with production of the grain. But that's sort of very roughly. But then during that time, it's developing first of all, the water capture system, which of course is the roots and will depend very much on how you manage your soil. And I know you're in a part of the world where you have limited soil depth and you have fairly acid soils. So it's very different from the UK, where we have generally alkaline soils and we have quite deep soils. But so in the UK, we know come spring, our soils will be full of water and they will hold against gravity about 150 millimeters of available water if they're reasonably well rooted. So that's the sort of benchmark for water, soil water capture. We have about 200 millimeters of rain over the 4 months from April to July. And so that gives us about 350 millimeters of water to work with. But then we have the solar radiation, the solar energy. And the solar energy is of the order in the UK of about 14 terajoules per acre per year. You get about 17, so you're better off in that respect than we are. But your main problem is your water supply, and we with wheat grown in the best way we currently know intercepts about half of that. So about something like 7 terajoules actually get are intercepted, captured by the crop, and it turns each of those terajoules into 1.2 tons of biomass. So I'm now giving you these numbers are the numbers that we use to calculate your potential yields, as I'll show you in a minute. But so at the end of the day, we have something like 8 tons per acre of total biomass from the 7 terajoules that we've intercepted, and that about half of that is harvestable, which gives us, because we sell a bit of moisture along with the grain, it gives us 4.4 tons of grain. So that's how a crop grows in these terms of the resources that the crop actually uses. And all your inputs that you're managing have to try and influence the water capture or the light capture part of this equation. Okay, but we then need to sort of think what is possible in our environment. So in the UK, we've decided, rather than 47% energy capture, we think it's perfectly feasible that we could be able to put that up to 60% energy capture. And we think it's perfectly feasible for the roots to capture a whole extra 100 millimeters of water. And if we did that and improved our conversion efficiencies a little bit, the water conversion and the light conversion, we would be able to get something of the order of 8 tons per acre of grain. So we're currently working at a little over half of that. So there's masses of potential for improvement according to fairly robust, I mean, they're sort of basic physiological understanding. And by working with you guys and by working with all the farmers in the UK, we're able to improve our understanding of this. But you know, these are the numbers we've got at the moment, and this is the way we're going forward. So in order to work out where your crop is in relation to that understanding, we need to take some measurements, and we've tried to select in the ends the measurements that it's relatively easy, even for a farmer who's busy doing lots of other things, to actually give us this information. So we need a soil description. We need to analyze the soil's health, because that's very relates to the fertility and the ability to generate the canopy, the intercepting canopy. We then need to keep a close eye on the nutrition, because again, the nutrition is very important for development of the canopy. We need to understand the light capture. We can do that from satellites. We need to understand the storage capacity of the crop, which is determined by the number of heads. And then we need to do the analysis of the crop at harvest, which I'll talk a bit more about in a minute. We need your agronomy details, and we need the weather, which luckily in the digital age, we can get online for anywhere in the world for any day in time. So the thing I want to emphasize is, and I think this is the sort of revolutionary part of what we're doing in the EN, is that we've got this concept of doing a post-mortem on every crop. So, and in fact, this is a crop that wasn't harvested too long ago. A few weeks ago, David Waith from in New Zealand was harvesting some of their world-beating, record-breaking crops, and there he is standing in one, taking a sample for us to process for him. And the important thing about this grab sample is it gives us an ability to estimate the number of shoots, so the storage capacity of your crop. It gives us an ability to understand the partitioning between the straw and the grain at harvest, and it allows us to know the number of grains per head and all these physical characteristics which enable us to understand how your crop has developed. Because remember, your crop develops sequentially. The number of shoots is determined first, the number of grains per shoot second, the size of the grain third. But then also we like to have a sample of grain taken as you're harvesting it. So what we are doing in the UK is taking a couple of handfuls or a jugfuls from each trailer as it's delivered into the store, and we put that into the green bucket and mix it up, and that gives us a very representative sample of the material you're producing on your land, and we can then analyze that for all the 12 essential nutrients and work out whether any of those nutrients are short for your crop. And the reason that I mean, at the moment, this is very much work in progress, but we have some critical values, which you'll see at the end of your reports referred to, and you'll be able to relate your value to each of these critical values. So if any of your values are less than these critical values, then we infer that there may have been a restraint on your growth because of that particular nutrient. But we can't find anyone else anywhere in the world that's doing this at the moment, and we cannot understand why. It seems a sort of no-brainer that if you'd spent you know, your biggest input is your nutrients, you spend a lot of money on them, why wouldn't you monitor them when you harvest them? It just seems so obvious. But anyway, so that's what we're doing. By the way, the 1.9% nitrogen equates in your the way you express your protein levels to 9.4. And I was just looking at Aaron's the data that you've all got. You're all over that, which possibly means that this year you may have over-fertilized. But I just want to, I hope I haven't gone too far over, just show you just one example winner from the UK and the sort of crop he grows and the sort of inputs he uses. So Ian Learmouth is from Ellen in Aberdeenshire. He won the prize last year for the percent of potential in wheat. His Ellen in Aberdeenshire is right up in the northeast of Scotland. I chose him because his soil depth is relatively shallow. In fact, I think it's a bit deeper than he said it was, but and that means that he actually produced what we estimated his potential yield was in tons per acre was about 5.5. In fact, he got a bit more than that, which possibly means he managed to find water that was below what we assumed was available. But just to sort of all this information appears in his report. I mean, in fact, our reports here are 24 pages long, and they have 100 different metrics in there. Ruth's going to take you through your reports in a minute, but this is as much of his data that I could get onto one slide. I'd particularly point you to the box and whisker charts down the left-hand side, which show you, as I said earlier, the middle 50% of values are shown by the box, and the whiskers show you the maximum and minimum, so you can see where your value is compared with everybody else. You can see that Ian's water capture, the second chart down, was 129% of what we assumed was available. So there must have been either a very efficient use of that water, or just he happened to, his crop captured more water than we estimated. But then you're probably interested in the physical inputs. So the agronomy over on the right-hand side, his soil is classed as a clay loam. He plows. He grew his crop after canola. He regularly uses farmyard manures, and farmyard manure has been a consistent association with our high-yielding farms. He sowed his crop on the 25th of September with 375 seeds per square meter, which I think you have to divide by 10 to get the number per square foot. So that's sort of 38-ish. He applied, despite already having applied organic manures, he applied his nitrogen in 5 separate applications. This is sort of indicative. We find an association between the number of applications and yield. He was pretty generous with his other nutrients. He used 4 PGR applications, and you can see the names of the products there. He used 4 fungicide applications. His total spend in pounds per hectare was 135. He used biostimulants. I'm not a great believer in them, but he used biostimulants, and he harvested his crop. Because he's in the north of Scotland, it's quite cool, so it has a long lifespan, which is a really good thing for high yields. It nearly had its first birth date, but he harvested it on the 10th of September, having sown it on the 25th. So that's a sort of example of how a winner actually managed his crop in the UK. And I better stop because I've gone on too long, I'm sure, and pass back to Aaron, I guess.
All right. Thanks very much, Roger. So that's a bit of background of kind of how we got here, and the perspective from the UK yen. And next, we're going to move on to Dr. Ruth Wade, who completed her PhD in 2016 at the University of York, investigating the impact of changes in rainfall patterns on barley crop development and pest management. She continued her research career at the University of Sheffield as a postdoc, working on projects evaluating land management practices and growth trade-offs in grass species. In 2018, she moved to ADAS as a crop research consultant, working with many different agricultural businesses, assessing their products, practices, and tools. And she's particularly passionate about the yield enhancement networks, building data sets, driving innovation and knowledge transfer between businesses, academics, and growers. She models the potential yields. She codes and graphs and creates reports for the UK cereal yen, forage yen, and the Atlantic Canada yen. She's passionate about sharing the yen thinking and knowledge around the world. And I'll hand it over to you, Ruth.
Thank you very much, Aaron. So I'll just share my screen. And can you see it okay? Great, fantastic. So yes, thank you very much, Aaron, and thank you for inviting us to talk today. It's lovely to see some familiar faces, but for those of you who haven't met me, my name's Ruth Wade, and as been said, I'm here to talk to you about the potential yield model and quickly a whistle-stop tour through the reports. So in the yen, the aim really is to move from a crop that looks like something on the left here to a crop that looks like something on the right. And through all the decisions that you make, whether it's pest management or the number of nitrogen applications, we want really the decisions to have the overall aim of intercepting more solar energy and capturing more water to support growth, as Roger's already explained. And with that thinking in mind, we have calculated a potential yield for all of the contestants in the yen competition. Now, this isn't predicting what yield you've got this year. It's about pushing those boundaries of what is biophysically possible at your site. So if you had the perfect crop with the most inspired husbandry, what could you produce at your particular location? And when calculating these potential yields, we first have to think about the resources available at your site. And we're talking about how much solar energy is available at your site and how much water rainfall is at your site. And then we must calculate how much of these resources the crop can actually capture. And if this was the best crop possible, how much of these resources could it capture? And then, as Roger's explained already, we have these conversion factors from the literature, knowing the genetic possibility of how good your crop can be at converting the energy it's captured into a yield that we use as edible energy. Now, we know your resource availability from weather data, and we get that weather data from a company called DTN. And we know your conversion from literature values, so we use we know from literature that you can produce 1.4 tons of biomass for every terajoule of energy that you intercept, and that you can produce 2.23 tons per acre for every 100 millimeters of rainfall that you intercept. But the thing that myself, Roger, and Aaron's team have been working really heavily on is how can we push the boundaries of your crops, making the perfect crop to capture as much solar energy and water. And that's the bit I'm going to talk about in the next few slides. So for the model, I want to take you back to what we do in the UK to start with. And this graph here shows an average crop in the UK, our benchmark crop, what we compare our crops in the UK to normally, so an average crop in the UK. And for that average crop in the UK, we have lots of information about, and we know at every time point throughout the year how much light on average it's intercepting. So on this graph here, you've got on the x-axis the months throughout the year, and on the y-axis, you've got the amount of light intercepted. Now, our average crops emerge in the middle of October and grow slowly up until when our temperatures are so low that we don't have any growth, but our crop does continue to intercept some light over the winter. And then once temperatures start to rise, we have increased growth and our crops produce a bigger canopy, more leaves, able to intercept lots of light up until grain filling. And then once senescence starts, the light interception reduces. So this is how a model of our normal crop in the UK would look. But as I've said, yen isn't happy about this. We want to push the boundaries, want to improve those yields. So we've come up with this red line on the graph, pushing the boundaries on particularly two areas. So we believe that if our growers sowed earlier, we could have a bigger green area coverage before winter, so we intercept more light. But most importantly is this delaying of senescence, because in the UK, if we ever have some sunny days, it's always more in July and August. And if our crop has senesced already, we're missing this opportunity of intercepting all of this light, which could be transferred into energy and biomass. So we think, and we know we've got growers in the UK that can delay their senescence and their crop and their harvesting in September, which is the example that Roger just showed. So we know that this is possible. So we're encouraging our growers to push the boundaries and try and meet this, this graph. So when thinking about Atlantic Canada, we have created a similar light interception for your crops. So the red line here is the UK potential that I've just showed you on the previous graph. And the green line now is what we have modelled for Atlantic Canada. So we believe that you could have a crop that could be emerging before October. And the growth here is slower because your temperatures are lower than in the UK. And over the winter months, your growth has now stopped because the temperatures are low. But what the biggest difference between the UK and you guys is that you then have snow cover, and your crop cannot intercept light during this time. So whereas the UK over our winter, our crops are still open to the sunshine, you guys have got snow cover, which means that there's no light being intercepted. And then as you get snow melt, you start to increase your light interception, the temperatures increase and you can start to increase your light interception, the canopy's growing, you've got more leaves. And then we feel that you could still push the boundaries to senescence, and you've got really good levels of light and light radiation here, where you could intercept more energy and create more biomass. So this is how we've captured your light interception. So now to create a crop that is intercepting all like this light and growing so big and creating so much biomass, you need a hell of a lot of water. Okay, and Roger's already talked about how important water is. Now, we're limited obviously from the rainfall unless you irrigate, but the main thing about water is that it comes from the sky, but it ends up in the soil, and the soil is so critical in holding this water in those holes between spaces between soil particles and their roots getting down and allowing the roots to take up that water. Now in the UK, we in the model predict that roots could go down to 2 meters. Not all growers in the UK are getting rooting depth to 2 meters, but we think we can push the boundaries by good soil management to get those roots down to 2 meters. Now, unfortunately, as Roger says, in Atlantic Canada, there's no way you guys are going to get down to 2 meters. And Aaron's team has dug down in all of your fields and measured your soil depths, which are shockingly shallow. So when thinking about your roots, we really think that you could push the boundaries and get them down to at least 60 centimeters. But this means that you're missing out on all of this soil water holding capacity. So your soils are shallow, they don't hold as much water, and your root systems are also very shallow. So getting into what we call a water deficit, where your soil is not providing any water for your crop, is a real reality for you guys. And then if you add on the burden of soil compaction, you only exacerbate this problem. So when you compact your soils, you squash all of the soil particles together. There's no spaces for the water to filter through. It either runs off or doesn't penetrate at all, and your roots can't get through it, they can't take up the water. So you're exacerbating your already shallow soils and small root systems. And so when the model assumes that your roots can get down to 60 centimeters with no soil compaction, but even then you see in a modeled biomass accumulation on this graph that there are points, particularly last year in June and July and August, where our model says that no growth has occurred because you simply do not have any water left in your soil. It's all been used and you've had no rainfall to maintain any soil moisture to allow growth. So with all of those parts of the resource availability, the capture and the conversion, you end up with these maps that we have produced for you that feature in your report. And on the left, you've got the fall planting map, and on the right, you've got the spring planting map. And these maps really demonstrate how much solar energy you have, but how much of that growth is then limited by how much water you have available. And so we find these maps really interesting about where you sit and where resources are available and what you potentially are limited by. So when thinking of like what is potentially possible at my site, we've then given you a really heavy, detailed report about everything that you've done in this year, and it can seem rather overwhelming, but the main question that we want to take away from all of this is, how could I have enhanced this crop yield? And we've split up the report into 6 separate areas, which I will go through a little bit more in a second. And we really want to try and encourage you to, at each section, start to ask some questions about how do I compare to other people? You know, what possibly was limiting my crop this year? And did I put down enough nutrients? And to do those comparisons with the rest of the competition and maybe compared to how the winner performed, we've created these benchmarking graphs, which Roger has already mentioned. And they are called a box and whisker plot. And we have created one of these graphs for all the different measurements that we've taken. And most importantly, if your crop was a winter wheat, all of the graphs in your report are just winter wheat values. If you're a spring wheat person, then all the graphs in your report will only show spring wheat values. And so for that, so if you're a winter wheat grower, we have compiled all the winter wheat values. We then show where the 50% of the middle yen values sit, and that's in this box here. This line here shows the middle person, or the middle value of all of those contestants. The extreme whisker to the right shows the highest yen value in your category. And the extreme whisker to the left shows the lowest yen value in your category. And then we have two other lines. The first one is the yellow bar, which shows your value, and the blue bar, which shows where the winner was for that particular measured component. And so we hope that with this graph, you can really see where you compare to the blue line, which is the winner, and where you compare to the extreme values in your category, or where everyone else sits. So here, perhaps you're not so far away from the winner's value, but if you were down here towards the lower end, maybe it's something that you need to think about and think, well, is this something that I need to improve or change, or is this relevant to where my resources are? And so, for example, I just got an example graph here from the actual report. This is planting date. This is just a mock-up of a random contestant who's sown on the 25th of September. He's bang in the middle of all the yen contestants, but there's some extreme values that are much further away from where they've sown, and the winner actually planted earlier than this contestant. So this is a possible opportunity to maybe push the boundaries. Perhaps if they sown earlier, maybe they could have intercepted more light. So this is an example of where you possibly look towards making a different decision next year. So when going through the reports, this is a whistle-stop tour. We are hoping to hold a workshop to go into the reports in more detail, which I know will be mentioned later in the meeting today. But pages 1 to 8 focus on yield and potential yield, how we've calculated it, how you've done, how you've compared to everyone else, and then growing conditions. So what was available at your site, the water, the radiation, your soil conditions, and how much water and nutrients it's held. So throughout these pages, particular questions that you could be asking yourself is, how does my yield and percent of potential compare to others? How do the resources at my site compare to others? And what should I be working towards? So, you know, my potential, why do I want to push my yields towards? Then page 9 to 13 is the agronomy and resource capture. And there's so many questions you could ask here, but 3 just to start you off with is, how do my decisions compare to others? You know, have I chosen the right variety? What could I have done better? And how did the capture of light, energy and water compare to others? 14 to 17 focus on crop structure and grain analysis. And so this is more when we start to talk about, did all the nutrients get into my crop? Which nutrient was most limiting? And how well did I set up my crop for seed filling? So that's the general whistle-stop tour through the report. But I think the main key things that I want to share with you today is, when going through the report, today, just take initial review of it, have a read through it, have a look at where those yellow bars sit compared to the rest of the contestants in the competition. But don't get bogged down in the detail. It is 18 pages long. We realize it's overwhelming. We've measured so many things for you, and especially if this is your first year, it can be really overwhelming. So, you know, we don't mind if the main thing is if you can just change one thing or note one point of interest in the first year, that is enough for us just to get yourself aware of what the competition is and how you sit compared to other people. That's the main thing. Don't try and take everything out of this report. There's too much information. So as you go through it the first time, maybe highlight the most important messages from your report. So maybe your pH is in the right range and compared to the winner's value, and it's maybe something that you could try and address for next year. And so therefore you can set 1 or 2 targets for the next year that you could just try and alter and have a go at and see how you compare next year. But the main thing our UK growers have benefited from is using it throughout the next growing season by focusing on the relevant page to the decision you're making here and now. So have it on a kitchen's work surface or wherever you want it to be. And when you're deciding on your nutrient management plan, just get out the report, have a look, compare what you did last year and compare to the winner value, and use that as maybe just a point of thought at that time. So the main thing, yeah, is not to take it all on today, to try and use it throughout the season to guide your decisions throughout the season. And then join in next year and come along to another meeting and compare your reports year on year and see, you know, is there a reoccurring theme? Is my soil always low in pH or nitrogen? And identify the important messages that just keep coming up year in year so that maybe it's something that you can start to address. And most importantly, come and ask. We don't want you to take away this report and think, oh my gosh, this is too much information. I can't do anything with this. It's not helpful. So please come back to us and ask. And like I've said, hopefully we'll have this workshop where we can go through the report and you can get clear ideas of where you want to take your crops for the future. So thank you very much for listening, and please do get in contact if you want any further information. I'll pass back to Aaron.
Okay, thanks very much, Ruth. In the interest of time, we're going to keep things going here, and I guess it's my turn to start sharing the presentation here. Okay. Okay, so are we good? Everybody see that? Okay, good. All right, so we've heard the background from Roger on where the yen has come from and where it's going, and Ruth did a breakdown of the model and how the model translates into the reports that everybody's gotten. And I'm just going to talk about the context of the yen and what we found in our region in 2020. Okay, so this is typically what the breakdown would look like in terms of, you know, where we were going to divide the work. 2020 obviously was a totally different year, and things changed quite unexpectedly there in the springtime. And we were actually, you know, at one point considering whether we were going to do this or not. The executive of the Atlantic Grains Council, they really see really good value in this for the industry, and it was imperative that that we continue this. And so with us, we normally have a student dedicated specifically for this project they have their own rig and they go around and take samples for the entire summer and help us with some of the sample processing. This year, we were lucky to get into our own research plots and do anything, let alone get out into the public and start sampling. So this was the face of yen in 2020. Doug's no stranger to the grains and oilseeds scene. And, you know, a lot of the agronomy that you would use on your farm, chances are Doug did the original work on farm. Honestly, if there's anybody that gets an award today, I think Doug should get an award for the amount of work that he put in, all the soil and tissue sampling, and he helped us significantly getting the management data. It's no small task to track down farmers and get their information so that we can plug it in. So it's really important that the data are as accurate as possible, so that, you know, the conclusions that we're pulling out of these models are valid. And yeah, so that's basically the face of yen for 2020. And the AGC executive, not only did they want to continue with the yen, they wanted to expand it to include more crops, which I was against from the beginning, but everything ended up working out. We have more crops and we have more sites. So I know that there were times when Doug made it back to PEI just before they closed the bridge after sampling trips in both New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. We're looking to, obviously the bulk of the sites are on PEI, but we're really pushing for more sites in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick for next year. This is what it looked like, the difference between last year and this year. Overall, we had approximately a 30% increase in the number of farmers participating and approximately a 40% increase in the number of fields. And this, honestly, these next couple slides are, I mean, this is really where all of the yield went in 2020. And I'm just going to kind of go through it month by month. You can see in May, there was a bit of rain in some of the grain growing areas in New Brunswick, Western New Brunswick, and in Nova Scotia. Keep in mind that this is the combined precipitation for the entire month, so it doesn't really capture how spotty things were. But June, this is basically where all the yield went. The taps turned off and the temperature went through the roof, and things dried up in June. And we move into July. You know, if I know this is basically all Irving land in New Brunswick, but you know, if there happened to be any fields here that had some grain in them, they were pretty lucky to get the most amount of rain for July. But I'll draw your attention to this little belt in Prince Edward Island. This was absolutely the worst place to be growing anything in the Maritimes in 2020. They just did not get a break for rain at all. And then the limited amount of rain that they did get in July and some of the other grain growing parts of the region, it was just too little too late, and the damage was done in June. So August was way too late for rain. Most crops were going down by then, and you know, any rain that would have come at that point would have just messed with harvest. So I went through, in the reports, you have your means and kind of the range and the winner's value and your own value. And I just went through and did a global analysis of the data that we have for 2020. And the plan is to every year increase the size of this data set so that we can start to pull out these regional trends of what's working and what's not working. And essentially, just these are not everything. These are just the highlights that were blatantly obvious with the crudest statistics possible that I could have used. So with soil, the biggest story for soil in 2020 was soil depth. And Ruth alluded to this earlier, but and I'm speaking mainly about PEI because this is where the majority of the sites were, and it's where most of my experience is. But you know, to have an average soil depth of 30 centimeters, it's you know, the alarm bells are going off there. And one of the issues, the biggest issue in the soil loss equation is erosion for us. And essentially we have a hard sandstone underneath, and whatever soil is on the top is what we have. We're not getting any more soil. There are many fields that have what's called a fragipan, and that's essentially a chemical compaction. And no amount of ripping is going to break up those fragipans for any significant amount of time. And, you know, largely we're lucky with the wet dry cycles and freeze thaw cycles, because a lot of the compaction that we would have gotten through the growing season is largely corrected through the freeze thaw cycles through the winter. And we also have a fair amount of legacy compaction that's underneath. So I think that, you know, the soil survey texts from the 80s show 60 to 80 centimeters of soil in PEI. And what we have now is all that we have left. And, you know, it's really important to hang on to that soil. And you know, we're dealing with the depth thing here. So the roots are only going to go so far. And if the soil is shallow, then the roots aren't going to be able to make the most of the nutrients in the water. So overall, there was a clear relationship between soil depth and yield, particularly for the winter wheat. But this is, you know, the roots are able to get down there and penetrate. And as I mentioned, the moisture and the freeze thaw cycle would make it a little bit easier for the roots to get down there. But I mean, the roots are going to go where the moisture and the nutrients are, and the nutrients are going to be where the moisture is as well. So when we look at some of the changes from 2019 to 2020, fertility was a big one. There's quite a few people using the UAN this past year. I think there was only one person that was using it in 2019. And it seemed like people were paying more attention to their micros as well. We saw quite a few more people applying different micronutrient blends through the season. It seems like you know, some of the more standard fungicides that have been used previously have been replaced by these newer formulations, pretty much right across the board, not just in PEI, but in Nova Scotia as well. And we're also seeing more fungicide applications through the season. And with the cultural practices, and I don't know if this is people are paying more attention because it's a contest, or if it's you know, the threat of Doug McDonald knocking on your door to get the information. But we definitely have more detailed records. We didn't see any underseeding. I think there might have been one or two sites that were underseeding this year. But we had quite a few more in 2019. And overall, we saw more varieties, a greater diversity of varieties. I just want to touch on that a little bit here. So in 2019, we had the spring wheat and the winter wheat, and it was largely comprised of 6 varieties. And if you look on this graph in 2020, and I'll blow that up a little bit, you can see that I think that you know, when there's a competition about and people are looking at throwing a bit of money at a field for competition, I get the sense that, you know, including an improved variety may be part of the calculation that's going on there. The one thing I want to point out here, though, is you know, when these error bars here, this means that we have multiple sites and multiple instances. So, you can be pretty sure that the mean values here are the actual mean values. If you don't see the error bars, you can't really trust that result. It's basically a one-off, and we need more information, either more sites or more years before we can go with those numbers. And I just wanted to, on that note, I just wanted to plug the Atlantic Grains Council, the amount of variety performance work that goes on. Dan McCachran and his team, they do a great job going through all of these varieties and looking at them for disease resistance and performance. And it's been made abundantly clear that we will never see a plant breeder in Eastern Canada ever again. So our best bet is to take varieties from other places, run them under our environment, and report the results to you guys. Okay, so the biggest correlation that we found was exactly what Roger was talking about earlier, was the heads per square foot. This was the single biggest correlation to yield out of all of the management practices. There's different ways to do this, whether it's playing around with your seeding rate or, looking at managing tillers. Personally, I'm a big fan of single plant, one head per plant. I'm not convinced that you get a whole lot of yield from the tillers with our short growing season, but whichever method you use to increase the number of heads per square foot, that's kind of where you want to be, and that's kind of where you want to center your management. Another strong correlation that we saw was the number of fungicide applications directly related to yield. And it didn't really matter which crop you were growing. If you're adding nitrogen, you need to be adding fungicide. These, so Roger pointed out that these curves are not really as steep as they should be, and it's definitely a product of the amount of precipitation that we would have gotten, and whether the plant was able to use the nutrients that were put down, use the nitrogen that was put down. And overall, we saw a positive relationship with the number of nutrient or nitrogen applications. With the winter wheat, it's a little bit different. If I can just move this thing out of the way here. It's a little bit different because we're not able to, as the season went on, it dried up, and those later top dress, it wasn't going into the plant at all. And honestly, with the winter wheat, if these last top dress events weren't there, then we would see a line that was similar to these ones down here. So you can push it for so long, but when the water dries up, there's no fertilizer getting into the plant. And it's kind of the same case with the protein. And the plant decides on the yield early on, and then the protein later than that. And so what we think we're seeing here is, there would have been lots of fertility in the soil. But by the time the rains came to actually take it into the plant, we're seeing that go right into the protein rather than into the yield. And I wanted to put this down. When you see these straight lines, it generally means that there's no correlation whatsoever. And we know that sulfur is very important for nutrient use efficiency, and it's a critical component of protein formation in the grain. But we're not getting any response. You kind of we need to be down around here. Sulfur is expensive, and if we're looking at a 7-to-1 ratio with nitrogen at about 200 pounds per acre, you're maybe at 25 pounds of sulfur. So the sulfur has to be, I mean, it's not going into the plant if there's no water either. But you know, I know we can't totally test or trust our soil test results for sulfur, but I think an application of around 20, 25, 30 pounds per acre would put us in the right area. This is too much. It's just a waste of money. Okay, to wrap it up, the yen, why should we keep going into the yen, and why should we increase the number of fields? This is an extremely novel way for us to capture on-farm data. The fact that it's a competition tends to spice things up a little bit and get people thinking creatively about how they can better manage their fields and get better yields from their fields. What we're seeing in the on-farm agronomy, you know, with the plot scale, we tend to be able to turn out data relatively quickly. In about 2 or 3 years, we can answer some basic questions. It takes a little bit longer to do that at the field scale, or we need more fields. And the idea of collecting farmer data over plot data is a really exciting notion for me. And I think, you know, this is probably the future of research, is actually looking for trends in the farm data, identifying bottlenecks, and then trying to dial in those bottlenecks in the small plots, rather than you know, try to come up with different ideas in the small plots and then try to scale them up to the farm level. You know, on the East Coast, we have not a lot of agronomy research on the ground, and largely what you guys are depending on comes from other places. And not everything works from, you know, in my experience in trying to dial in Western agronomy in Atlantic Canada, you know, we usually have to start with a clean slate. So to be able to look at, you know, what you do in the field and tease out the trends is a really interesting way to do research. And finally, this nearest neighbor. I know, you know, everybody goes to see the so-called experts and researchers and everything like that. And, you know, looking at the management data from this year versus last year, it's quite clear that nobody's picking up what we're saying, but they're certainly picking up what the winners from last year's yen are saying. So, you know, that's a really important thing to, it has a lot of credibility when there's a grower that's pulling off these massive yields. So, and just to talk about, you know, what Roger had mentioned earlier, you know, the looking at what you spend versus what you produce. I mean, yield at all costs. That's not really where we want to be. We want people to be able to get the high yields and know why they're getting those high yields, rather than just you know, throwing everything at it. We found from our on-farm research with the Atlantic Grains Council that rotation is the biggest driving factor for most of the effects that we're seeing in the field. And we're only starting after 6 years, we're starting to see some of these bigger trends and some of the reasons why something is in one field and why it isn't in another field. And the biggest factor is rotation. It's coming up over and over again. And really, the biggest part of the yen that's going to move us forward is sharing our data and working together. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up for that presentation. And I think the chat is open if anybody wants to has some tasteful comments or questions as we go. I think in the interest of time, again, I'm probably just going to roll into our actual awards part of the afternoon. All right, so the moment that everyone's been waiting for. Okay, so I just want to stress that before we get into this, that, you know, it is absolutely critical that we have independently verified yields. So we had a couple instances where we had people placing, but the yields weren't independently verified, so we couldn't include them in the contest. So going forward next year, you know, basically for the folks who, it wouldn't be fair for the folks who go through the effort to have their field weighed, to, you know, include the people who did yield estimates or crop insurance estimates. So we really need to hammer that out for 2021. So as Ruth alluded to in her presentation, basically her models model the absolute best crop that you can get given the resources that you have available. So when we talk about percentage of potential yield, that basically means that you did the absolute best with the cards that you were dealt. Okay, and we're going to start with my personal favorite crop, which is spring barley. So right off the bat, we've got Troy Webster, who comes in from King Cora. He had, so when I go through each one of these, I'm going to talk about this precipitation value, which is the amount of precipitation that was that occurred during critical grain filling periods. So this is the amount of precipitation that is directly related to the yield that you got. So Troy hit 58% of a 2.79 tons to the acre. And Troy, you saw my slide where I showed basically the precipitation dead zone in PEI for 2020. Troy is right smack dab in the middle of that. He grew Selena, 1.2 million seeds to the acre. These are the nutrients that he used. Refine SG on the herbicide, and went with an application of bumper for foliar fungicide. Next up for silver, we have Kevin Skirman of Freetown, which is right in that same area. He had 163 millimeters of available water during critical grain filling period. And he pulled off 61.2% of a 2.97 ton to the acre yield. He grew a leader at 1.5 million seeds to the acre. And here's the list of his nutrients. It's good to see a little bit of lime used in the production practice. He used Refine for his herbicide, and he also went with Bumper for a fungicide. And the gold medal for percent of potential goes to Randy Drenth. This field was at Graham's Road, and he had 188 millimeters of available water. He pulled off 62.5% of 2.91 acre or ton per acre crop. He also grew leader at 1.3 million seeds to an acre. He went with pre-plant and UAN on the top dress, and he also limed his field as well. MCPA for the herbicide, and one of these newer Copax for his fungicide. Okay, so we previously we had the percent of potential, and this is basically the format that I'm going to use going forward. You have percent of potential first, and then we have just basically the highest yields. So for the bronze medal, we had a dead tie between Randy Drenth and Kevin Skirman. We went into the decimal places for this one, but it was too close to call. I wasn't comfortable, making the call between this. That's how close they were. So we have our first ever official tie for bronze on the barley. And the interesting contrast between these, I just wanted to point out. So Kevin had a slightly higher seeding rate than Randy, and he put most of his fertility down pre-plant, and Randy had one top dress. So that might have made the difference on the lower seed rate. Who knows? But he also had a little bit more water there too. And out of nowhere, out of sunny North Lake, we've got Miles Rose, who's one of these guys who's trying to fit potatoes into his grain rotation. He was blessed with 223 millimeters of available rain or available water during a critical grain filling period. He hit 1.86 tons to the acre, and he went with Island as a variety, 1.37 million seeds to the acre, and he used some pre-plant fertility and a top dressed as well, MCPA, and no fungicide. And gold medal goes to Eric Richter, the agronomy salesperson who can obviously walk the walk in addition to talk the talk. Good to see. He pulled off an amazing 2.2 tons to the acre. He was blessed with 247 millimeters of available water during the critical grain filling period. He went with Suresh. We've done a little bit of work with Suresh. It's a Syngenta variety. I think Eric might know somebody at Syngenta or something to be able to get that seed. But it's performed well in our plots at Harrington. It's good to see a little bit of diversity. He had 1.3 million seeds per acre. And we've been back and forth on the fertility, but he's going to get a chance to talk about that in a little bit. He used MCPA 600 for his herbicide and Treva Pro for his fungicide. Okay, moving right along, we've got spring wheat, percentage of potential. For the bronze, we have Colin McNevin, who's also agronomy sales, and he's shown that he can walk the walk. He had 171 millimeters of available rain. He pulled off 65.4% of a 3.11 ton to the acre yield. So this yield here is a calculated yield based on 60 centimeters rooting depths and the ideal situation. Colin went with CM Raven, which has done quite well in the performance evaluations at Harrington, and you can look it up in the seed guide. He went with a seeding rate of 2.3 million seeds to the acre. And I think his family went without groceries there for when he went to pay his bill at the Agrimark, but he basically threw everything at it. And the interesting thing about Colin's approach, he put everything in at the beginning, and the micros and IBA is a plant growth hormone, was top dressed, and there was some boron that was added as top dress as well. Used a PGR manipulator, MCPA for his herbicide, and then 2 applications of fungicide, Treva Pro, and Marevicase. Oh, spoiled there. Ryan Hamill, he was in the winner's circle last year as well. He's in that the dead zone for precipitation this year in King Cora. He had 161 millimeters of available water. He pulled off 68.2% of a 2.78 ton to the acre crop. He grew the old standard AC Walton, 1.6 million seeds to the acre. And he used both fertility applied at plant and top dress. Went with the PGR. Pixaro is his herbicide, and Serafit and Procero as crop treatments. And overall for the spring wheat, we had John Visser for percentage of potential in Croppo. He pulled off 70% of a 2.88 tons to the acre crop. Excuse me. He had 190 millimeters of rain that was available during the critical growing period of the crop. He used AC Helena, 1.8 million seeds per acre. Most of his fertility went down at planting, and then he top dressed as well. Went with Refine as the herbicide and foliar spray of Bumper for the fungicide. Okay, so we're moving into actual yields for bronze. John, we just talked about his management. He was able to pull off 2.022 tons to the acre of spring wheat. In the silver position, we have Colin McNevin, who was able to pull off 2.033. We're down to the decimals on these ones, but there was enough of a gap that we could call it. So good job for both those guys. And our winner, veteran grain grower, Leonard McIsaac, pulled off an amazing 2.15 tons to the acre. He was blessed with 275 millimeters of rain during critical grain filling periods. And he's using the old standby. He knows how to use AC Walton. If anybody knows how to use AC Walton, it's Leonard McIsaac. He's planted 2.4 million seeds to the acre. And he's got a pretty good recipe that he sticks to for most of his crops, and it's really working for him down there. So he used MCPA as a herbicide, and he went with Rese as his fungicide. Okay, so winter wheat, this is percentage of potential. Okay, we had Pat Dunphy down in Caledonia, who had an amazing 305 millimeters of available water during the critical grain filling period. So basically, Pat won the lottery as far as rain goes for our yen this year. He was growing the Pioneer variety 25R40, seeding rate of 1.4 million seeds to the acre. He had nothing down pre-plant at all. And he just went with 3 top dresses through the season. The first one was relatively early. And I should get his management sheet out here, but it was all UAN with sulfur, and no other nutrients were applied. He used Modus, which is a new fungicide coming out, I think, hopefully this year. I think Eric Richter will be able to comment on that. It's shown some promise. I know they use it quite extensively in the UK. He used MCPA and Gramitrel as his herbicides, and went with both Triva Pro and Rese as his fungicides. Kyle Jewell pulled a silver on this one. He's a dairy farmer in Meadowbank area, clear operator. He's had 184 millimeters of rain, and hit a whopping 81.2% of 3.47 tons per acre. So a very high percentage of potential. He went with I guess the newer Pioneer variety 25R61. 1.4 million seeds to the acre. And he put some nutrients down pre-plant, and then just used the UAN to carry him through the growing season. Refine is a herbicide, and he also went with the Treva Pro and Rese for fungicides. And the gold medal for percentage of potential for winter wheat goes to Troy Webster. I mean, it's unbelievable that he could hit 82.8% of a 2.97 ton per acre yield where he was growing this past year. I mean, we got to get this guy over to Saudi Arabia so he can show people how to grow grain in the desert, because that's essentially what this guy did. So 25R61, 1.6 million seeds per acre. And I know Troy went on the early side for the planting, and that might be part of the reason why he did so well. And he's got his top dress, 2 top dress, nothing down with the seed. And he also limed the field. Refine for the herbicide, Treva Pro early on, and then Procero as a fungicide. Okay, getting close to the end. We've got the winter wheat, just winter wheat yields. Ben Visser, another fellow looking to put potatoes in his grain rotation in Orwell. He was blessed with 255 millimeters of rain during the critical grain filling period, and got a whopping 2.9 tons to the acre. He was growing 25R40 Pioneer variety, and 1.6 million seeds per acre. He was using an AS and urea blend, and he had some AN in the in the shed, obviously, that he had to get rid of. He went with Refine for the herbicide, Stratego Pro, and Procero for his fungicide. Leonard McIsaac, back on the winner's circle. This field was in Glencoe, 257 millimeters of available water. Hit a whopping 3.07 tons to the acre. He was growing the Pioneer variety, the same one, 25R40, 1.35 million seeds to the acre. And he has a blend of urea and AS that he used on 2 top dressing events. MCPA for herbicides, Stratego Pro early on, and Moravisace as his fungicide as well. And our highest overall, Pat Dunphy. We showed his stats early on, but this guy, he won the water lottery, and it looks like he won the entire competition as well. Whopping 3.6 tons to the acre. And there's his recipe as it is. I actually, when I was talking to Pat about this, he was, adamant to say that this was very much a team effort, and he had some people working with him. And he just sent me a text maybe about an hour ago saying that he was on his way to retrieve a broken truck in the middle of nowhere and that he wouldn't be able to join the panel. So I basically, I made him commit to being part of our report powwow that we're gonna have. And so everybody's gonna get a chance to hit him with the questions then. So before we go any further, I managed to find a picture of Ruth's grandfather here to talk about giving a tip of the hat to people that really, honestly, Becky, from where she was last year to where she was this year, she would have placed silver if she had a independently verified yield. Also, Robert McDonald was in the same boat. He grew the Brevant 625 variety and had lots of good things to say about that. We also have we have to recognize our brothers and sisters in the other Atlantic provinces. We got Murray Culberson, who had the highest overall yield in New Brunswick, and Chris Sweeney, who had the highest overall yield in Nova Scotia. So I wish we could clap. I'll just clap for everybody because this is kind of what it's all about, is keeping things spicy and keeping the competition going, and giving credit where credit is due for a lot of these people. And yeah, congratulations to everybody who won, and congratulations to everybody who was part of this this whole event. So what we're going to do now is open up the grower panel. We've got a few minutes. We're running a little bit late. Fortunately, this room here, the people who were supposed to come into this room after me, their mother made them go to school today, so we have a little bit extra time on this room here. So we can pull up the panel, and I think what I'm going to do, if everybody's okay with it, I'm going to bring up the slide of your management, and I'll just get each of you to just individually tell us a little bit about yourself and your management approach. We're not looking for a big spiel here. We just kind of want to get a feel for what your philosophies are, how you manage your fields, and what we can learn from all the people that hit the top marks on this. So I'm going to start with, let's see if I can get this. And I'm going to rely on Keegan to help me pull everybody in here once I. Okay. Okay, is that good? Can you see this, or is it in presenter view, or is it the main view? Anybody?
You're good.
We're good? Okay. All right, so Randy Drenth, are you out there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Randy, the first thing, when I called him, he said there was a mistake. I got fourth. So I know that some people, they don't like the spotlight, and that's not what it's about. We just have to imagine that we're all sitting around a campfire, and this is basically it. We're all friends here. We're in the circle of trust. So Randy, can you tell us a little bit about your operation and how you go about farming?
Yeah, we farm in Springfield. We grow corn and barley, and we raise cattle as well. That would have been our third year growing leader, I believe.
Okay.
Our seeding rate was dictated by how much the drill could actually put on. So we've kind of maxed out our 40-year-old drill in what we can put on. So that crop was after corn the year before. We have Pottinger Terra disc, so we broadcast the fertilizer, go over it once with the Terra disc and seed it. And that one was actually done, I believe it was the end of April. It was early when we could get in there. I seeded one part of the headland into the snow just to see what would happen. And apparently it doesn't grow when you plant it in the snow. I guess our fertility program, the one change we made is we were using a 22-11-11, and we took out the DAP and put Mez in it instead this year. And we found that got the crop to a darker green color earlier. So we were happy with that change. And then it stopped raining. That field looked really good, and then it didn't. I was there at the end of June, and it smelled like it was ready for harvest. It smelled like burning straw. So by the time any rain came, it was too late. So it was unfortunate for the potential it had, but those are the variables we can't control.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Randy. Next, we have Eric Richter. You out there, Eric?
Yeah, I just took it off mute. Can you hear me, Aaron?
Yep, yeah, we're good.
Yeah, just again, a thank you to you and the Atlantic Grains Council. Again, a great project and very pleased to be part of it as a grower. I did a few things. The new variety that we talked about, I tried to go as early as I could. I planted there in April 25th. I broadcast my seed on the frost, and thanks to Townsend's board, some equipment and light cultivation, just trying to push the planting date. It snowed on it twice, April 28th and April 28th and May 8th. It did start to come through about May the 10th, which was interesting. I broadcast my wheat, spring wheat, right beside it a week earlier, and the spring wheat came up a week later. So the early planting on barley, I think Ruth talked on that. We got to push on the front end to capture as much sunshine as we can. But it's interesting, with my early planting date, my crop also was combined by David Garrett on the back end, and I was at least 7 or 10 days later than my neighbors, just with that one fungicide spray with the multi-actives. I think it capitalized on plant health. It's a semi-dwarf. I did not use the growth regulator, but what was crazy was my head count and tillers. So tillers were 3 to 6 per plant. And my head count, I had counts up as high as 60 heads per square foot, but the average was, I think, around 42. So it's interesting when you look at all the specs. I think there is potential with barley to push it well above that 2 ton. And again, just pleased to be part of the program in 2020.
Yeah, I think, so Eric, I think, that's, it's a lot of what Roger and Ruth were talking about, maintaining this crop momentum to take it out, to make it last longer and to pack on more yield. I mean, traditionally, we're trying to get it off earlier. So, before the rains came, I think, or rains come. And I think it's a bit of a trade-off for us for sure. Trying to push things a little bit later, but that's obviously where the yield is.
It's interesting that I try to farm a little bit of land here in the East End, and 60% sand. So I had one of the highest sand percentages. My organic matter is nothing to write home against. It's like 1.3 to 1.7. And, it still is about the head count, it seems, and kernel count, because when I did the numbers through, it looked like I was 50% higher than the average with my kernel count per square foot. And Peter Johnson's talked about that, Phil Needham, and it really is about head count, and how we get it. That's another story. So,
okay, all right. Thanks, Eric. Okay, next we have John Visser. You out there, John? I know John was a little unsure of hopping on the Zoom. He mentioned that his son was the one that did most of the work in the field, but his son's going through surgery in the hospital, so he wasn't able to join us. I'm not sure if, is John on there?
I don't see him listed in. Yeah. Who's Cameron Visser? Is that a relationship by chance?
There are more Vissers out there. I think our goal should be next year to get a Visser in every province. This is this should be the goal. Okay.
Looks like John signed off, I think.
Okay. All right. We'll try and get John to chat when we have our report meeting. Leonard, are you out there, Leonard?
Do you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. On the spring wheat, my biggest thing I have with spring wheat is what I think has helped me a lot is my pre-plant. I put on the urea ammonium sulfate mix, and I think it's helping my crops big time. The way I look at it, when I put this on, I'm not guessing when I should treat my wheat for a top dress, especially early. It's there waiting for the wheat when the wheat wants it. It's broke down and it's ready to go. You don't have to worry about dryness and all that stuff. I think that's my biggest thing I'm seeing and growing the wheat was is this year pre-plant before, so it's seems to be helping me a lot.
Yeah.
Other than that, I guess it's basically what everybody else is doing, I think, so.
Yeah, so that's a good point. And that's traditionally how we manage barley, is putting down a lot of stuff up front, and we tend to stretch it out a little bit and feed it as it goes. But it honestly, this year was in 2020 was a prime example where we weren't. When the taps turn off, the fertilizer availability turns off as well, and it's is it worth putting it on later? Maybe not. Maybe it is. Okay, thanks, Leonard.
Thank you.
Troy, are you out there, Troy?
Yeah, I'm here, Aaron. Thank you very
Okay.
much, and to your entire team and the UK team for doing such a comprehensive report, and it's great information. The winter wheat, I believe, and have been getting more and more that earlier is better. So planting earlier in the fall, I've been trying to do that by 2 to 3 days every year until, and it seems like the yields are getting better and better the earlier I plant. Now it's with what Rose said, capturing the light. We're not capturing a lot of light right now because the ground is completely covered. But so the winter wheat made it through last winter just incredible. There was 0 winter kill. It was just shaping up to be a wonderful crop. About April the 15th, it was actively growing, and I did my first top dress April 24th, which is the earliest that I've ever fertilized. Normally we would get our planting done and the cereals would be up 6 inches and we'd go in there, the land would be nice and dry. But this year I said, no, that crop is actively growing. It needs a boost right now. So April 24th is when we did that first top dress, and the crop just exploded. There's no doubt about it. And then we had all our crops in, and then about by June the 10th to 15th, we were looking at the sky saying, we could really use a rain right now. And I think your map is perhaps underestimating or overestimating, I should say, the rain we actually got. Even within that area, half a kilometer away meant whether we had 10 mil or not. So even within that range of the map that you showed on PEI, there was fields in there that didn't even get any of that 150 mil hardly. So things kind of went down from there, but I'm happy about the percent potential. I've never thought a lot of that before until this report came out, and I'm going to perhaps dig into that a little bit more. If you had a potential of 2 ton and you're hitting 1.8, why would you spend $300 or $400?
Right.
But if you had the potential of 4 ton and you're getting 2, then there's room for growth and expansion. So that's a very interesting concept, the potential. But my area was extremely dry, and I was happy to get what I got, considering the area I was in. So thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Troy. Roger, did you want to comment on that percentage of potential and why we included, and and you're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, Troy said it very well. We remember the definition, and it's been said, this is the perfect variety grown with inspired husbandry. So there may always be some component of what we say is the biophysical potential that we just don't have the technology, to reach at the moment. But 83% is pretty darn good. And I think as we go on year, we'll be able to look at the chances, because you're talking about investment, Troy, but you don't know what the level of rainfall is going to be in June and July when you have to make the investment. So it's always going to be a sort of, it's going to have, you're going to need some risk factors to bring in, and it's feasible that over the years it is worth making the investment to have all those heads and to bet on there being enough resource to fill them.
All right. So, and then finally we have Pat Dunphy, but as I mentioned, he's moving grain and retrieving broken down vehicles right now. So we'll have to get his take at a later date. So so that's basically it for going through. I want to pull all of the gold winners together for a panel, and we want to open it up for specific questions now, if we can, Keegan. Okay, so okay, are there any questions from the audience for any of these folks, any of these gold medalists? Okay, and hearing nothing, I'm going to go ahead and jump in and start to ask some questions. So for me, rotation is really top of the list, and it's what I do most of my work on. Maybe if I could get you guys to comment on where grain fits in your rotation, and how you go about figuring out your cropping systems, that'd be great. Randy, would you mind starting?
Sure, Aaron. For us, we're growing corn and grain. So the grain crop, we'll take that off and then put a cover crop in behind it before we go into corn the next year. And then the corn ground, we'll just leave that after we combine it, and then let everything kind of deteriorate over winter, and then till it once in the spring, and that seems to break up the trash pretty good, and then plant our grain crop. So it's a pretty simple system, but we aim for ground cover as much as we can. So we the only time we have bare ground is at seeding until that crop really gets going. So that's kind of our goal. And
how long have you been using cover crops?
This will be our third year doing that, I think. So what we're doing now is we're putting oats and potash blended together and then blowing that on after the grain crop's off, and then just incorporating that with, if we have to lime, we'll lime at that point, and if we have manure to spread, we'll do that then too. So we kind of do all that extra work in the fall when we have a bit of time and we're not quite as concerned about compaction. The ground carries a little better there in September than it would early in the spring too.
Yep. Okay. Eric?
I'm soybeans and cereals. Primary, no potatoes, no root crop. So it's maybe not reflective of many other growers on the island. I have no equipment to speak of, so it's all custom done on a harvest basis. Trying to incorporate some cover crops. I did the same as Randy this year, oats after my spring wheat and the barley. And the next one is to try to figure out a cover crop, not winter wheat perhaps, but a cover crop after the soybeans.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Leonard, how about you?
You hear me?
Yep.
No, I rotate land with two other farmers. One guy grows Brussels sprouts and cauliflower, broccoli, and the other lad says potatoes. I find with potato ground, pH is quite a bit lower. On most of our cold crop ground, it's over 6, most of it 6.4, 6.5, a lot of them. So a lot of my fields are going in with wheat after cauliflower, and also in the fall I get to plant a lot of early winter wheat, and we do subsoil a lot of ground because the cauliflower packs the ground. It's hard to believe. You get 35 Mexicans walking over how much they can pack the ground, but it's hard to believe how much package is in cauliflower. So I do subsoil everything that's got cold crops in it. So other than that, I think the biggest thing is the pH is very high. We're running probably 6.3 to 6.4. I know there's some fields 6.8. So That's a big factor. And then the cauliflower leaves a lot of residue. It's a little hard to get planted in the fall because you got to work it, try and get the stuff chopped up in the ground, and it gets too loose. So I end up having to roll some of these fields before I can sow it, just to settle it down some. So that's
do you find there's much, you mentioned the residue, but do you find there's much nutrient carryover, like from that? Because they kind of hammer the coal crops, right, with fertility, right?
Yeah, they do, but there's a lot of stuff there, green plant tissue, and yeah, I find in the spring I don't get in a great big panic to top dress my winter wheat.
Okay.
Most of that, and same the spring wheat. Just when I go in spring wheat, it's the same thing. There's a lot of stuff there. It's all dried up come spring, but there's still a lot of garbage there, especially in Brussels sprouts.
Yeah. And do you still have the beef cows?
No, I got rid of them a year ago. No.
Okay. All right. And Troy.
Well, we are potato farmers, so we're on a 3-year rotation with different crops. Most of the spring cereals, well, all of the spring cereals get planted after potatoes. So I'm going into last year's potato crop. There's not a whole lot of trash there. We're using a one-pass machine that tills and seeds at the same time. So I have that on the go, but I also grow a lot of peas now. And I've been putting winter wheat 100% in behind field peas. Field peas are harvested between the 15th and 20th of August. There's quite a bit of trash left behind. And then a couple of weeks later, 3 weeks later, 1st of September to the 15th, 20th is when I'm putting in my winter wheat. I started that about 4 years ago. And if everyone tells me that there's enormous amounts of perhaps nitrogen left over in the nodules from the field peas, I don't know, but I'm having really good success by putting winter wheat in behind the peas. And last year, with the help of Ryan Hamill, we done a few little experiments. I actually no-tilled. Although I'm a potato farmer, I have to get in the ground to do a bunch of tillage. I'm trying to minimize my tillage in all the other crops that I grow. So last year I did 2 or 3 acres of no-till winter wheat right into the pea stubble, pea trash. And I had some good results. It didn't look good at first. It had to get through all the trash last fall. But after that, I don't think I've seen any difference in yield. So I'm going to keep playing with that because it, provides some moisture cover and weed suppression in the fall. And so I'm going to pick that up a little bit more and do a little bit of this more no-till. And so that's what I've been doing with the winter wheat, and having some pretty good luck with it and seeing how I can improve it even more.
Troy, just on that, and just to follow up with Alan Miller has a question about pH, and I noticed part of your management, you're applying lime, which isn't normally done for potato guys. So what made you start to applying lime?
We started a fairly strict lime program about 20 years ago. We were working with a couple of agrologists, and back then we were down to 5.2, 5.3, and 20 years ago they were showing us charts where all the nutrients are available. We've all seen those charts that show between 6 and 7, all the nutrients are available. So we made a conscious effort quite a while ago to try to get our pHs up, and over the last 20 years, we're pushing 6.2, 6.3 now in some of our potato fields. And we think our nutrients are quite a bit more available. So we don't know, we may be causing some other issues, possibly. We don't know with scab, I'm not sure, but we're anywhere from 5.8 to about 6.2. And our organic matters, we've been pushing real hard. Anything at all we can leave on our field to increase it, that be straw from our cereals, hay crop. We made a conscious effort here about 7 or 8 years ago that soil health is probably fairly important. So our organic matters are 2.5 to, we even have some at 3.5, 3.3. So, we're not perfect, but for potato farming, we're trying to do the best we can.
Eric, I know you moved from Ontario to out here. What's how do you deal with soil pH? Oh. Did we lose Eric?
He looks froze.
Yeah, he looks frozen. I think he has to go put the snow off his solar panels to. Okay, maybe I'll move on to Randy while Eric's joining in again. Randy, I saw that you applied lime, and it's not such a big deal. Like you don't have any potatoes in your rotation, do you? Or do you trade land, or like you did?
That field, that I'm not sure how that got on. We didn't actually lime that field. That was just the second crop on that field since we started renting it. So we had corn on it the previous year, and I think it was beans the year before that. So I don't have a whole lot of history on that field in particular, but we're targeting 6.2 to 6.5, I'd say, for our pH. Like we're trying to keep it there for the corn production side of it. So if we start seeing low 6s, then we'll start liming.
Okay. All right. So do we have any more questions from the audience there? Don't be shy. This is always the case. It seems like when we host this event in a pub, we get quite a few more questions. So that's obviously what we have to be doing next year.
Leonard here, I have a question.
Yeah.
What's some of the guys, what do you think is the earliest we can plant winter wheat on PEI? Like this fall was exceptionally nice, but I've been kind of holding off a little bit some years because of this cauliflower round. It's ready end of August. So I kind of, what's everybody's feeling, and how early could we plant winter wheat?
I'm just going to jump in. I see Robert McDonald there. Robert, I want to get a comment out of you for what you think is too early for winter wheat. And you're on mute.
Mute. There, am I on now?
Yep. Go for it.
I don't know. We grew winter wheat years ago, and at that time we put it in really early, and it got really dense. And after that, I was told that we had a potential for snow mold and stuff like that. We got away from the winter wheat at that time and never thought much of it. Now, since we've been back at the winter wheat, I feel for us, I would like to get my winter wheat in nowhere than the 15th September. I try to get it in there. We end up, the 20th to 24th or something like that every year, just because of, logistics and type of thing. But for me, I don't know whether I wouldn't mind trying some the 1st September, like a small plot, half a field. I don't think it hurts. I do see what drew my attention to it 4 years ago was I saw a grower that had put some in the 15th September, and I put mine in around the end of September, and the top growth was like hands above what mine looked like, although mine wasn't too bad. So that's what got me interested. How early? I don't know. I really don't know. For us, the 15th is a goal, but I wouldn't mind trying to get some in around the 1st September just to try it and see. I have a question in terms of growth regulators. I don't know. We had an experience this year just by mistake in another plot. We tried the winter wheat, and I put a lot of fertilizer on it, and I knew I had to put growth regulator on to help mitigate that. And we ended up with a 3-acre plot of winter wheat in that winter barley field. And all summer I was looking at that winter wheat, and other people were commenting it's like monster heads on it. It never came to me till later in the summer what was going on in that field. I had put the growth regulator on the winter wheat along with my winter barley. And the field next door that I grew the same variety of winter wheat in it, I just treated it like the rest of my winter wheat, but it's literally fence row to fence row. Same soil, same seeding rate, same fertilizer, same everything. The difference in yield was almost a third of a ton to the acre. And I noticed in Roger's presentation, the winter in Scotland, I think it was Scotland, he had put on 4 different applications of growth regulator. Was that why? The question I have is why 4 different kinds? Was there a reason for that?
I can comment on that a little bit. One of the issues for us is, you get a label rate on the plant growth regulator, and what they tend to do in the UK is they talk about their PGR use as just tapping the brakes, and so they tend to apply more often, but at a much lower rate. And they found that that's a lot easier to hit the timing, because especially in a spring crop, they struggle with dialing in the timing for PGRs on the spring crop because it's growing so quickly. The winter crops, they have a little bit more freedom to hit the different times, but lower rates more often is kind of what the European approach would be. And that's kind of our biggest problem here is we do have some growth regulator options, but the timing is so critical and the rate is so critical that it's a big unknown for us. Actually, Dan McCackern and I are hammering out a project for until 2023 to look exactly that, where we're using multiple growth regulators at lower rates applied more often.
But Erin, should I just comment?
Absolutely.
I'm not a PGR expert. I've got colleagues who are much better informed, but generally, I don't think we're using PGRs to control lodging. I mean, yeah, maybe a bit, but these are about getting extra benefits that are not to do with lodging. I mean, we find a general association. You showed your association graphs, and we have the same thing with the more PGRs, the more yield, and that's without lodging. So, but on the other hand, they're not necessarily, we're not looking for very short crops because we find a positive association between height and yield. So it's probably something to do with balancing up the competition between the main shoot and the tillers, because this remember, we're all winter wheat, pretty much all winter wheat, and so we get a lot of our yield is on our tillers rather than on the main stem.
Yeah, that kind of lines up with what went through my head this summer after I saw what was going on. Like, we never put PGRs on our winter wheat because the variety is short stocked, and we've never been able to put our winter wheat down using this variety. Just by mistake, I applied it on this plot, and the size of the heads was just like, it was phenomenal. And when I took the yield off from one field to the next, I said, all right, there's something going on here. And when you said they used 4 different kinds, do they have the same, how will I say it? Are you allowed to apply the same amount of growth regulator per acre, per hectare here as they are in England? Or can they use more per hectare over there than we can use here?
I don't know the answer to that, Aaron.
Yeah, so the rates are similar for the different products. It's just the timings are different. So you think too that the timings are the same, but the windows are different essentially. So they don't have winter, and there's different stages that they'd be applying these growth regulators at. But the rates are pretty much the same. I think the modus rate is exactly the same in the UK as it is for us. But they always give a maximum, like the label will give you a maximum amount that you can apply through the season, right? But the general assumption is you apply that rate, but you know, that might not be the case. Okay, do we have any other questions? Anybody in Nova Scotia or New Brunswick have any questions? Hearing none. What do you think, Heather?
Yeah, no, this is fantastic, Aaron.
Okay.
I think, you know, with respect to time, it is 12:15, so I think we
Okay.
should clean this up and go from there. So I'll let you start, and then I'll finish, or I can start, or whatever. It's totally up to
Yeah,
you.
no, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Perfect. So yeah, no, I guess just to echo what I just started to say is that you know, I appreciate Aaron and Ruth and Roger for today's event. I think at one point I think we had 53 or 54 participants, so I think that is fantastic. I'm not sure if I'm kind of getting tired of smiling and doing the Zoom thing, but I think, you know, we'd never be able to have so many people in one place. So I think this is a great venue and a great way of you know, of exercising this information. So I guess I just have a few comments that I would like to make. You know, with 2020 somewhat behind us, I think hopefully you've all learned a little something that you'll be able to put into your field expertise moving forward for 2021. So that was our goal. So hopefully we've achieved that, and we all look forward to what you're going to be able to put in the ground for 2021. I think it's been said a number of times this morning with regards to increase in sites and locations. I can't express that importance. We need to, in order for this study to keep going, we need to make sure that there's additional sites in all 3 provinces. So I would encourage my friends and colleagues in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia to get out there and to find us some more sites. I'm glad to see, you know, with a crazy start to 2020, I'm impressed with the numbers that we did have. So I can only hope that 2021 is going to be that much bigger and better in those provinces as well. So not only increase in sites, but increase in commodities, I think is important as well. I know, Aaron, that we had a headbutt, I guess about a year ago of bringing in these new crops, but I'm glad that we did. And I hate to tell you, we're going to do it again this year to you. So heads up. You know, there's been talk. I know, Ruth, you've got some things prepared on your end with additional commodities. I'm going to throw out there maybe something on some forages, maybe some oats. I know, Aaron, you've mentioned oats. I won't use the rye word, Aaron, but I know that's been thrown out there as well. I'm not sure about corn. There could be some options with regards to corn as well. It's a hot commodity here in the Maritime. So, you know, we'll definitely work with Roger and Ruth and Aaron to put some more, you know, commodities in the ground or in the inactivity for 2021. But, you know, we need to hear from you as well. So, I mean, if you've got some ideas, I think it's important that you reach out to Aaron or myself, and you've got Ruth and Roger's emails on there as well. So if you've got any ideas on how we can increase the sites or increase the commodities, or what commodities that you would be interested in participating in, make sure that you let us know of that as well. Aaron, you've alluded to a workshop. I think that's extremely important. I did send all the reports out earlier this week, and some of those, it can be mind-boggling. So a lot of work went into putting those reports together. But, you know, there's no sense of sending those reports out if you don't understand them or you don't learn something from them. So I think our goal moving forward, I'm not sure it'll be in the month of March or not. It's getting, you know, it's already what, the 4th, and I'm nervous of how many meetings we've got left to do this month, but for sure we'll definitely be putting a workshop together with your participants and with Roger and Ruth and Aaron, and we'll divulge into those reports and you know, at that point a little more open concept, informal meeting of what those numbers mean and how you can input some of those numbers for your crop in 2021. So once that date and Zoom link is confirmed, I'll make sure that that email and invite is sent out. So lastly, I mean, I've said thank you to the group before, but I want to make sure that that you truly understand the appreciation, Aaron, that for you bringing this yen activity to the Maritime Provinces. I think this was your baby, you know, a number of years ago, and I'm glad that you've shared it with Atlantic Grain Council and the grain oilseed producers here in Atlantic Canada. So I definitely appreciate that. Lastly, you know, producers, you know, if it wasn't for you, this wouldn't be here as well. So thank you for participating, being open, and sharing all your information. I think that contributes to a great 2020 yen project. So congratulations to all the winners, and thank you to everybody that participated. So thanks, Aaron.
Right. So just to wrap things up, yeah, I think we're going to include oats next year. We really need to spread the word and get more fields. You know, I know there's a little bit of a hassle factor associated with participating in this, and you know, the competition aspect. I don't. You know, it drives some people, and it may scare other people off. But I think the value for the data that that you get in that report is certainly worth the hassle factor in tracking your yields through time. If you want to talk about hassle factor, we could talk about what it goes into putting that report on your table. It's quite a bit of work that goes into that. Don't get me wrong, it's a lot of fun. And honestly, I think when we're using your data to look at trends, I don't think there's any more powerful way to try and understand what's going on the East Coast, and try and drive those yields up. And you know, we had a terrible year all around last year, and just imagine if we all get Pat Dunphy's rain next year, then you know, things will be through the roof. So with that, I think I'm going to call it to a close. And I again, farmers, thank you very much for being part of this yen. This is really a big deal for us, and we hope that you enjoy it, and we hope that you enter your fields again next year. So thank you very much.